Emma and Jake had been married for 7 years. Their life together seemed stable, though not without its cracks. Between their demanding jobs, bills, and raising their 2 kids, romance had taken a back seat. Emma often longed for the carefree, exciting days they'd shared before their responsibilities consumed them. When her best friend Claire invited her to a Halloween party, Emma saw it as a chance to cut loose for a night. Jake had opted to stay home with the kids, brushing off Claire's party as childish. Emma dressed as a seductive witch, complete with a short black dress and fishnet stockings. When she left the house, Jake gave her a peck on the cheek and said, "Have fun," without a hint of jealousy. The party was in full swing when Emma arrived. Loud music, costumed revelers, and endless drinks created an intoxicating atmosphere. She felt alive, free from the monotony of her daily routine. As the night progressed, Emma found herself chatting with Ryan, a man dressed as a pirate. He was charming, funny, and attentive, qualities Jake had seemed to lose over the years. One drink turned into several, and before Emma knew it, she and Ryan were dancing provocatively on the crowded dance floor. The alcohol and the excitement dulled her sense of reason. When Ryan suggested they find a quieter place to talk, Emma hesitated but followed him to an upstairs room. One thing led to another, and Emma crossed a line she never thought she would. The next morning, guilt hit her like a tidal wave. She returned home to find Jake making pancakes for their kids, oblivious to the betrayal. Emma tried to act normal, but her guilt made her distant and anxious. Jake noticed something was off, and a few days later, he confronted her. At first, she denied it, but under his relentless questioning, she broke down and admitted what had happened. Jake was devastated. His trust in Emma shattered instantly. Though he loved her, he couldn't see past the betrayal. After a few days of tense conversations, Jake told Emma he was filing for divorce. No amount of apologies or promises from Emma could change his mind. He packed his things and moved in with his brother, leaving Emma to face the wreckage of their marriage. The divorce process was painful for both of them, but Jake remained firm. Emma was left grappling with the consequences of her actions, haunted by the realization that a single night had destroyed the life they had built together. As the weeks turned into months, the fallout from that fateful Halloween night seeped into every corner of Emma's life. Jake's departure left her household eerily quiet, despite the presence of their children. She tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for their sake, but the empty side of the bed and the absence of his laughter at dinner were constant reminders of what she had lost. Jake, on the other hand, was struggling in his own way. Though he had taken the high road by not airing their dirty laundry to friends or family, the pain of betrayal weighed heavily on him. His trust in people, especially in relationships, was fractured. Nights were the hardest. He'd stare at the ceiling, replaying moments from their marriage, wondering if there had been signs he'd missed. Emma sought therapy, desperate to understand why she had jeopardized her marriage. In her sessions, she uncovered feelings of neglect and loneliness that had simmered beneath the surface for years. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation she hadn't fully understood until then. She also realized that she had been unfairly expecting Jake to fill all the voids in her life, without ever voicing what she needed. The children were caught in the middle of the tension. Too young to fully grasp the situation, they sensed the shift and asked difficult questions. Why isn't Daddy coming home? Or, did I do something wrong? Emma did her best to shield them from the truth, as did Jake, but their world had undeniably changed. They now shuffled between 2 homes, neither one feeling quite whole. Jake, despite his pain, decided to join a support group for individuals going through infidelity-related separations. Listening to others share their experiences helped him feel less alone and provided him with clarity. Slowly, he began to understand that his anger, while justified, couldn't consume him forever. He focused on being the best father he could be, throwing himself into activities with the kids and finding joy in small, daily victories. Emma, meanwhile, was determined to make amends, not with the hope of reconciliation, but because she needed to regain some semblance of self-respect. She wrote Jake a long letter, apologizing for her betrayal and taking full responsibility. She didn't blame him, nor did she ask for forgiveness. Instead, she thanked him for the good years they had shared and acknowledged the pain she had caused. When Jake read the letter, he felt a flicker of closure. It didn't erase the hurt, but it was a step toward healing. Over time, they settled into a new rhythm. Co-parenting was awkward at first, with tension lingering during pickups and drop-offs. But as the months passed, they managed to find a balance, united by their love for their children. Jake began dating again, cautiously allowing himself to trust someone new. Emma remained single, focusing on rebuilding her life and being the best mother she could be. That Halloween night became a permanent scar on Emma's life, a reminder of a moment of weakness that cost her everything. For Jake, it was a turning point, a painful lesson in resilience and self-worth. While their marriage couldn't be salvaged, both of them emerged from the experience changed, carrying the weight of what was lost but also the hope of what lay ahead. As the years rolled by, Emma and Jake's lives evolved, taking separate but occasionally overlapping paths. Their children, now older, adjusted to the new normal. They grew up shuffling between two households, but both parents made sure they never felt unloved or unsupported. Despite their personal differences, Emma and Jake had one shared priority: the happiness and stability of their kids. Emma's journey was one of self-reflection and rebuilding. After the divorce was finalized, she found herself grappling with loneliness and a shattered sense of identity. Therapy became her anchor, helping her confront not only the guilt from her betrayal, but also the underlying dissatisfaction that had led her down that destructive path. She poured herself into her career, eventually earning a promotion that gave her a sense of accomplishment she hadn't felt in years. Socially, Emma faced judgment and whispers. News of what had happened at the Halloween party had quietly spread, and some of her old friends distanced themselves. But over time, she formed new connections with people who valued her for who she was now, rather than defining her by her mistakes. Emma also took up painting, an old passion she had abandoned long ago, finding solace in the vibrant colors and creative process. Jake, meanwhile, cautiously allowed himself to trust again. After a couple of short-lived relationships, he met someone who reignited his faith in love. Sarah, a kind and understanding woman, came into his life unexpectedly. She was patient, never rushing him, and understood the emotional baggage he carried. Jake eventually remarried, but this time, he was more mindful of maintaining open communication and nurturing the relationship. Emma struggled with seeing Jake move on. She attended his wedding, partly for the sake of their children and partly as a gesture of goodwill. Sitting in the pew, watching Jake exchange vows with Sarah, she felt a mix of emotions: happiness for him, regret for what she had lost, and a bittersweet acceptance of how far they had both come. Though their romantic relationship had ended, Emma and Jake eventually developed a cordial friendship. Time and maturity softened the edges of their pain. They occasionally shared coffee at school events or sat together at their children's milestones. These moments weren't devoid of awkwardness, but they were filled with mutual respect. Years later, their daughter graduated from college, a proud day for both parents. After the ceremony, Emma and Jake stood together, watching their daughter pose for photos. Emma turned to Jake, a small, wistful smile on her face. "We did okay, didn't we?" she asked, her voice carrying both pride and a tinge of regret. Jake nodded, smiling back. "Yeah, we did. Better than okay." It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation in the traditional sense, but it was something more profound, an understanding that life, though messy and imperfect, could still offer moments of redemption and grace. Though their paths had diverged, they had found a way to coexist, bound by the love for their children and the lessons learned from a shared, complicated history. After their daughter's graduation, the family lingered at a nearby park, reminiscing and enjoying the rare occasion of being all together. Emma noticed how comfortable Jake looked with Sarah, how easily they exchanged laughs and supportive glances. It stung in a way she couldn't fully articulate, but she knew it was deserved. She had spent years making peace with the reality of their separation, yet seeing Jake happy, truly happy, was both heartwarming and bittersweet. As their son prepared for his high school graduation a couple of years later, Emma found herself reflecting on her own growth. She was no longer the woman who had felt trapped in her marriage, nor the one who had impulsively sought escape in someone else's arms. She had spent years rebuilding trust, not with Jake, as their marriage was irreparably broken, but with herself. Through counseling and introspection, she had learned to identify and address the emotional voids that had led her to make such a catastrophic mistake. For the first time in her life, she felt truly self-aware. Emma's relationship with her children also deepened over the years. At first, she had feared they might one day resent her for the divorce, especially as they grew old enough to sense the underlying tensions. But to her surprise, they admired her strength and honesty. She never blamed Jake or tried to manipulate their perception of what had happened. Instead, she owned her mistakes, teaching them an invaluable lesson about accountability and resilience. Jake and Emma's co-parenting relationship also evolved. Though they'd been civil for years, by the time their son graduated, there was an ease between them that hadn't existed before. It was a quiet understanding. Neither one held bitterness, only a shared gratitude for the lives they had built independently. Sarah played a part in that, too. She was warm and inclusive, ensuring that Emma never felt like an outsider at family gatherings. Over time, Emma came to genuinely appreciate Sarah, even if the sight of her with Jake sometimes brought a fleeting pang of sadness. One evening, during a family barbecue celebrating their son's graduation, Emma and Jake found themselves alone for a moment. The kids were inside the house, and Sarah was chatting with other guests. Emma glanced at Jake, who was watching their son laugh with his friends. "He's turning out so well," she said, breaking the silence. Jake nodded, smiling softly. "He really is. They both are." Emma hesitated before speaking again. "You've done a great job, Jake. I know I put you through a lot, and I just want you to know I'm proud of the father you've been, and the person you've become." Jake turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "Thanks, Emma. I appreciate that. And, for what it's worth, I see how hard you've worked to make things right. It doesn't erase what happened, but I think we've both grown a lot from it." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the kind of silence that comes with years of shared history. It wasn't reconciliation in the romantic sense, but it was healing. They were no longer two people defined by betrayal and heartbreak. They were simply co-parents and former partners who had learned to find peace. As the evening went on, Emma realized she no longer carried the same heavy burden of regret. She wasn't perfect, but she had found a way to live with her mistakes, to use them as a foundation for growth rather than a prison of self-pity. Jake, too, had found happiness and purpose in his new life. When Emma drove home that night, she felt a quiet contentment. Life had not turned out how she had once imagined, but it was no longer a source of pain. Instead, it was a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and the possibility of finding light after the darkest of nights. The years continued to roll on, and Emma and Jake transitioned fully into their roles as parents of young adults. Their daughter landed her dream job in another city, and their son went off to college shortly after. With both kids now grown and independent, Emma found herself navigating a new chapter of life, one where she no longer had her children's constant presence to fill her days. At first, the emptiness was unsettling. The house felt too quiet, and the routine that had once revolved around soccer games, school events, and family dinners was now wide open. But Emma chose to embrace this new phase with the same determination she had applied to rebuilding her life after the divorce. She decided to travel, something she had always dreamed of but never had the time or courage to pursue. Her first trip was a solo venture to Italy, where she spent days wandering through cobblestone streets, marveling at ancient ruins and sitting in cafes, sketching the world around her. The experience ignited a passion for exploration, and soon Emma found herself traveling to other countries, meeting new people, and rediscovering parts of herself she hadn't realized were missing. Meanwhile, Jake and Sarah expanded their family when they adopted a rescue dog, a goofy Labrador named Max. Their home was lively and warm, filled with laughter and love. Jake was thriving in his career, and Sarah's steadfast support only deepened their bond. The couple hosted holiday gatherings that brought everyone together, including Emma, who had become a welcome and familiar presence at these events. One Christmas, as the blended family gathered at Jake and Sarah's home, their daughter stood to make an announcement. With a beaming smile, she revealed that she was engaged. The room erupted in joy, and soon after, the planning for the wedding began. It was a testament to how far everyone had come, that Emma and Jake could work together seamlessly to support their daughter during this milestone, with Sarah by Jake's side and Emma standing proudly on her own. The wedding was a beautiful affair, held in a serene garden with sunlight filtering through the trees. Emma sat in the front row alongside Jake and Sarah, all three of them sharing the same pride and joy as they watched their daughter walk down the aisle. After the ceremony, as everyone mingled, Emma and Jake found themselves chatting near the dessert table. "She looks so happy," Emma said, her voice filled with emotion. "She does," Jake agreed. "We did something right, didn't we?" Emma laughed softly.
"Yeah, we did."
"I guess all those late-night talks and tough decisions paid off." Jake studied her for a moment, a smile tugging at his lips. "You know, I think this is the first time in years that I've seen you completely at peace." Emma nodded, sipping her champagne. "I am, Jake. It took a long time, but I finally feel like I found myself again. And I'm glad you found your happiness too." There was a shared understanding in their exchange, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey they had taken to get to this point. Neither wished to dwell on the past anymore. They were simply two people who had learned from their mistakes and chosen to move forward. As the evening wore on, Emma danced with her children, laughed with old friends, and even shared a light-hearted moment with Sarah over a spilled glass of wine. She realized that her life, though unconventional and far from perfect, was full of love and possibility. In the years that followed, Emma continued to embrace her independence. She became an active volunteer for a local arts program, using her passion for painting to inspire others. She occasionally dated, though her focus remained on her own growth and happiness. Jake and Sarah thrived in their marriage, and their relationship with Emma evolved into something unexpectedly positive, a friendship rooted in mutual respect. By the time Emma and Jake's first grandchild was born, their past felt like a distant memory. What mattered now was the life they had created for their family, a life filled with lessons, resilience, and love. As Emma held her granddaughter for the first time, surrounded by the people who had shaped her journey, she couldn't help but smile. Her story wasn't one of perfection, but it was one of redemption, growth, and the enduring power of family, even in its most unconventional forms.